Let's talk about MongoDB. So I would like to perform a sort of introduction to this database engine, right? I'm not going to explain all the details, of course not, but just to give an overview about how it works. So before going into details, what you can see on the screen at the moment, this is a Codeflix, right? It's one of the apps created by Codeflix. And in here, the reason why I'm showing it is because it has a full data life cycle, front end to back end, and then to database and all the way back. So the front end asks for data to the backend asks the data to the database, and the database offers the data to the backend, and the backend offers the data to the front end. In other words, the way this works, ignore the title, this is not callbacks versus promises anymore. So we got the front end. The front end says, hey, give me the data, REST shows, right? You know that already. And then the front end asks, give me the list of REST shows to the backend. So the backend asks the database. And MongoDB queries to get the list of shows, and then it sends the data to the backend, which sends the data to the front end. Yeah, do you agree on that? This is the most fundamental journey on every single web application. The front end triggers the first communication, asks the backend redirects the request to the database. Yeah? Can we perform requests from the front end to the database directly?
Yes, you can with SQL injection.
That's bad practice, of course, right? So, not arguing whether technically speaking you can, I'm arguing whether you should, right? You shouldn't. When you create an app, you shouldn't delegate to the front end the responsibility to communicate with the database. That will be a big security hole. That's why you got the backend. Yeah? The front end has the backend, and then the relationship is between the front end and backend, and then backend and database. Yeah? So the backend is the man in the middle. So why we are talking about Mongo and not SQL Server or MySQL or any of these classic database engines? So Mongo is a relatively new type of database engine. Yeah, and non-relational, NoSQL, non-relational database. And it became quite popular. I know you go to Google, quite a lot of people, they don't like it, they say this, blah, 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 blah. So I'll tell you the reason why I do like it, and that at the same time explains why other people may not like it that much. The reason why I love it, I've been using it for many years already. It's not perfect, nothing in life is perfect. But the reason why I like it is because the data you store is a JavaScript object, yeah? In other words, it plays really well with JavaScript, yeah? Correct, it's made for the web. In the front end, you create user name Peter. You create an object. You pass the object to the backend as it is, yeah? Because in the front end you got JavaScript, in the backend you got JavaScript, and in the database you got JavaScript. It's JavaScript all the way around, yeah? And then the backend sends the same object. And of course it works on the other way around. When the front end wants to get the data, the database offers the object to the backend, and the backend serves the object to the front end. It's JavaScript. It's very easy to move data up and down and vice versa. That's why I love it. That works really well with JavaScript. If you are a Python developer, if you know, it may not be that trivial because you may have to do some kind of transformation. Yeah, and that's why I understand that it may not be that convenient. But because we do JavaScript, and because JavaScript is not the future, it's the present and of course the future, MongoDB it's a good option. Yeah? That doesn't mean working with MongoDB it's trivial, but at least it simplifies a lot. So,
Could it be
yep.
any other objective document database?
Yeah, of course, of course. I cannot give you the details because I'm not an expert on things like MariaDB or CassandraDB, so I don't know exactly how to deal with them. But I believe, finger in the air, you know, that this is an opinion of staying in the pub on Friday night, that it shouldn't be that much different as far as... Correct. Right, so this is conflicts. This data is coming from the database. Why? I'd like to show you the network tab, and then we'll have a look to the code base. So let me open DevTools. So I will try to open the network tab. So I'm going to refresh the page, and then hopefully on the right hand side, it's a bit complicated with that resolution, but yeah, so hopefully here at the bottom, oh yeah, thank you Google, yeah, there is a request called shows that, look at the shape of the request, HTTP localhost /rest/shows. This is what you are doing already, right? That's number 21, 22, 23, all these ones. Eh? And then if you look at the response, oh, surprisingly, it's an array. It's something that JavaScript feels very comfortable dealing with. It's not a blob or a base64, no, it's just an array. Yeah? So it's very easy to iterate on the array in the front end, use map, filter, reduce, whatever you want. Yeah?
Data from MySQL database, when you get it in your browser, it's different.
So probably you need some kind of adapter.
Okay.
You need.
It's done in the server side.
Yeah. You should do all these things in the server side. Yeah. So in other words, try to keep the front end, the simpler, the better. If you need to do any transformation, that should happen in the back end. In other words, imagine that tomorrow we don't want to use MongoDB anymore because of whatever reason, so we migrate to CassandraDB, which is another popular database. Towards the front end, that should be transparent. The front end has no idea about which database system we are running. That's a relationship between the backend and the database. That's it. But that should be transparent for the front end. Similarly, if tomorrow you create a native app for Android and it's not running in JavaScript, it's running in whatever language, yeah, the new platform, the new application should still be able to reuse the same backend. Yeah. So again, let's create firewalls. So their relationship between the front end and the back end shouldn't affect the database. And the relationship between the back end and the MongoDB shouldn't affect the front end. That's the way you separate the different layers of your application. Right, so again, we got an endpoint here, REST shows, that returns an array. Interestingly, and this is just number 31 or something like that, when you click in one of the elements, I believe that there is a new request. Let me try to find it. Here, no, what is it? Let me refresh. Here you go. When you access the details of a TV show, look at what we got here. We got a new endpoint, very similar, but look at how it looks like. REST shows, that's the same one, and then slash the ID of the show. Does anyone know why we have a dedicated endpoint for each TV show? Because in reality, we could fetch all the shows and then use find in the UI, yeah, which is what some of you are doing on task number 24. But why in the future we'll prefer to have a separate endpoint for each particular TV show?
Because mean, you are not fetching 1,000 of data.
That's
from the
correct.
server.
That's correct. It's all performance. If I have 100 TV shows, if I want to display them all, fair enough. But if I just want to access the details of one individual TV show, what's the point of bringing all the information of Game of Thrones here if I don't want to display anything? Eh? That's why we have a separate endpoint for that particular request. Let's talk about endpoints. And I know this is not strictly related to databases, but this is very important. When we talk about the communication between the front end and the back end, yeah, front end and back end, we talk about REST API. You hear about that? Yeah, REST is the protocol to communicate modern front end and back end. Yeah, of course we got other alternatives. Now we got things like WebSockets and things like that. But the majority of the communication between front end and back end will run through REST API. So what that means, I'm introducing REST because some of the principles of REST also apply to the database, to MongoDB. So with REST, we try to stick to something called CRUD. You know CRUD? Yeah. What CRUD stands for? Create, what else? Read, update, and delete. Correct.
So it's set of group, right? It's a set of group.
Is it?
REST.
Yeah.
It's a set of group.
Yes, correct. To be honest, when talking about REST, there are others. We have things like head and things like that. But anyway, these are probably the main ones when talking about data handling. If you've noticed, when you do a request using fetch, look, request method, get. Yeah? Can you tell me get is related to which one? Read, correct. Apart from get, what else do you have? Post, fantastic. Post is related to what? Wrong. Create, that's correct. When you want to create a new element, you do a post. What else? Put, correct. And put is related to? Update, correct. And what else? Delete, which is obviously related to delete. There is another one extremely important that we tend to underestimate, and this is, let me rephrase that. Not using it is a source of problems, like the ones we had with the coding challenge recently. You know, some scores failing to submit, it was because using put instead of something else. Does anyone know any alternative to put? Patch, correct. Patch is extremely beautiful. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. The differences between put and patch. But anyway, generally speaking, that's the way you communicate front end and back end. Yeah, you do get, or you do post, or you do put, or you do patch, or you do delete. Yeah, and when you do fetch, it is part of the config of the fetch request. You specify the type of request. What type of fetch do you want to do? You want to do get, you want to do post, you want, yeah? Specify that as part of fetch. Talking about code, which is something that you've already dealt with. So look, this is my backend in Codeflix. Yeah, so you can see the two endpoints we've been talking about. You see? Look, app.get. Yeah, get. It's not app.put or app.post. Of course it could be, right? If you want to create new TV shows, you have a backend, a back office in your application, and you want to add a new episode for Game of Thrones, you do something like that, app.post. Yeah? So look at how sexy the API is. You can reuse the same endpoint. So if you call app.get, or let me rephrase that, like that. If you got app.get rest shows, line number 9, it will get the list of shows. If you do app.post rest.shows, it will create a new TV show. Yeah? If you do app.put, something like that, it will update an existing TV show. Yeah? If you do app.delete, it will delete that TV show. Yeah? That's the contract between the front end and the back end. But again, this is just a soft contract because at the end of the day, the responsible of getting, editing, deleting, whatever, is not the backend, it's the database. That's why once the backend has captured the request, it needs to pass the control to the database, to MongoDB. Yeah, and this is where things start getting a bit more complicated. First of all, the very first thing you need to do to talk to a database is you have to connect. You have to connect to the database. Yeah? And look at what I'm doing here. It's my very first line of my backend. Before listening to any endpoint or any user request, the very first thing is, hey, as soon as we start the server with npm start, boom, connect to the database. Because if I cannot connect to the database, my app won't work, right? So if that doesn't work, stop, show an error or I don't know. But don't try to do any get, read, post because that won't work, yeah? So now the question is, how do we connect to the database? Well, this is what you do, speaking only once for every project, right? So again, I'm not going to explain all the details. You can refer to the APIs. There are some docs explaining how to do that. But essentially, because we are dealing with Node, you install MongoDB. Yeah? So that's the official driver of MongoDB for Node.js. So once you run npm install MongoDB, then you can require it, and then you can, again, ignoring every single line, which I'm not going to explain at the moment, you can essentially connect. Yeah? So to connect to a database, you need a URL, essentially where you specify the user and the password of your connection. Yeah? And then that's it, right? Can anyone tell me let me rephrase that. Can anyone tell me what type of data our connect function returns? It's a promise. This is the reason why I wanted to do this workshop after the promise versus callbacks, because that doesn't sound Chinese anymore. Yeah? So my connect function returns a promise. Why? Because it may take a while to connect to Mongo. Yeah? Interestingly, can you see that the connect method of MongoDB, it doesn't play with promises. You see, it has a callback function. Why? It's not my responsibility. It's not your responsibility. The creator of MongoDB driver thought it was a good idea to deal with callbacks. To be honest, I'm not sure if they've changed that recently. Yeah, but yeah, of course, that's the API. If you want to connect to the database, you should write that code. It's what it is. Yeah, and there is nothing we can do. This is all JavaScript. We need to pass a callback function, a higher order function, because the connection is asynchronous. It may take 2 minutes, hopefully not, but it may take a while to connect to the database. However, why am I returning a promise here? Because I want to encapsulate all the bullshit. Yeah? I don't like this API. I find it old-fashioned. I don't want to propagate this API to the rest of my app. That's why, look, towards my main app.js, my code looks very sexy, very readable. Try to connect to the database, and then once the connection is successful, do whatever. Yeah? And then if there is any problem with the code, I keep it encapsulated in that db.js. But towards the outside world, I'm not asking my clients, please pass me a callback function. I'm not doing that. Yeah? That would be a bit unfair. I'm returning a promise because that's the way that modern JavaScript should be written. Right, so once we manage to connect to the database, essentially we get an object, and thanks to that object, look at the things we can do. We can do DBO, that's the object that plays with your data, dot collection, and then the name of the collection. The collection, a collection is, how to explain that? It's not a table. It's, thinking about tables may be a bit confusing. A collection is a list of elements, a list of arrays. Yeah? So shows will be a list of arrays. We may have multiple shows, right? So I have a collection called shows, we'll have a collection called users, a collection called documents, a collection called whatever your data is, right? Travel destinations, whatever. Yeah? In the Codiri, we have a collection of challenges. Yeah? We play many challenges. So look at how this works. We said, A, out of that collection, find. No, find. Find what? Nothing. So here, we are essentially saying, A, give me all the TV shows available in the database. Rest shows. However, if we scroll down a bit, the next endpoint says, rest shows, ID. Look at how the syntax looks like. In that particular case, again, we say, okay, please refer to the list of TV shows. However, I don't want to get them all. I want us to get one. Which one? The one that is offered in the URL, rec.parents.id. This is very similar to React Router. You remember with React Router? Yeah? But React Router is in the front end, this is in the back end. But the syntax is pretty similar. Yeah? So that's the way you fetch data. Find, if you want to get multiple data, find one, if you just want to get one individual document. If you refer to the API, you will see, if I can find what the document is, you will see there are some nice docs where you can essentially get all the details about, look, find one, how to insert, how to remove, all the different operations supported by MongoDB. Yeah? So that's pretty much the idea, that's pretty much the concept. Any questions? No? Right, so I would like to talk about patch versus put, because I find this is particularly interesting. So what's the difference between patch and put? Again, this is not about Mongo. This is a common principle in software development. So when we do put, we are thinking about replacing a document completely. For instance, I have a user. Let's create a variable. Let user equal first name Peter, last name Williams, age 23, whatever. Yeah. So with put, essentially, we're saying I got a new user name where I want to change the age. So Peter turned 24. So with put, we can say replace the entire object with this one. Yeah? Which is okay, it works. Yeah? You can use put and no problem at all. Correct. You can see that you can achieve that using update. Again, all the details are documented in the API. But essentially, you can see that you can do collection.update, and then you can change the content, of the collection completely end to end. That means that what happens if I try to submit that using put? An error, wrong? No?
It will rewrite only for two. In
No.
patch, it can update only.
It's gonna delete basically first name.
Correct, Walter is right. If we do a put replacing that object with that object, That's okay. In our database, we'll lose the first name. Yeah? But that's a bit stressful. Because you need to remember to keep track of all the properties of your object, right? If you forget to add one property, the property will be missing. That's the first problem. The second problem, as Walter suggested, is performance. This is a trivial example. But one of the problems that will happen with you in the CodeDB platform is you got things like your avatar, which is a huge bunch of data, maybe 100, 200 kilobytes. You get all the scores. So what the problem was, I was doing a put when you score a new challenge, when you submit a new challenge, yeah, of you got that, and then I wanted to replace, so let's say you got a property called last score 78, right? But then we got here Bilius playing, and Bilius on the last score scored 81, right? So I wanted to replace something like that, which is okay, it does work. But the problem is Bilius avatar is 900 kilobytes. First of all, it's not efficient at all, right? We need to send a lot of data to the database just to replace something completely unrelated to Bilius avatar. That's the first problem. As a side effect, and that's why it used to fail for some of you, some of the requests time out. Yeah? Because if the system is very busy, especially, you know, when the challenge is over, that all the players get the score submitted at the same time. So that was too stressful for the database. Like, oh, suddenly, you are trying to update 5 megs of information, and eventually, yeah, Mongo gave up. And because of that, if it gave up, that means that last score of Bilius wasn't tracked. And that's why his score was missing in the space. Yeah? Because of that, the alternative of put is using patch. So patch means instead of replacing the entire object, only replace the property that has changed, which is extremely efficient.
A real update.
Second?
Could be a real update, not delete everything. But
Yeah, don't delete everything, don't replace everything, just one property. So that's much more efficient, and it helps to avoid timeout issues.
No, I have one question, but that patch, I mean, is a part of the communication between the server and the front.
It's actually both. So when we talk about patch, we're talking about 2 steps. First of all, when you send a new, when you submit a score, here you update patch. But again, technically speaking, you can put here get or you can put delete. So this is just the semantics. So, yeah, because you got rest scores, yeah. Then the chicken, the complexity is here with the database. So you can put whatever you want, but as a matter of good practices, it's good to keep consistency. If you want to update only one score, use patch here as a way to explain, hey, I'm planning just to update. Again, that's strictly speaking not necessary, but that's a good practice. And now the complexity sits here. How do we tell the database, how do we tell MongoDB, please update the entire document or please update a single property? That's the complex part. So with MongoDB, let me show you the API again. Yep. So essentially, there are 2 ways you can deal with that. Again, don't take that literally because that's sort of pseudocode. You got dbo.collection.update, so scores, I got player ID, yeah? So then with put, what I get is something like that. I got the entire details about that player, so I can access them doing let player equals request .body.player, whatever. So this is what the front end is sending. Yeah? So this is the all the details of the player. So then I can say, okay, no problem at all. Collection, the name of the collection, players, dot update, which player do I want to update? The one which ID is request.params.player ID. In other words, I'm accessing that parameter in the URL. Okay, fair enough. I know I want to update that individual player. But then, what's the new data of that player? You can do something like that. Yeah? If you do that, by default, it will simply replace the data. When you do update, you can replace one data with the other. Yeah? However, again, this is not efficient. So I would like to show you briefly how to play with patch. With patch, we can pass an object, and as part of that object, let me create a variable, patch model, and then patch model. So now, how do we do that? As part of that object, we can specify the properties that we want to change. For instance, if we just want to update the score, we can type set, and then score equals 54, whatever. So that will respect every other property. Yeah? What happens if we want to, instead of update the score, if we want to delete the scores? Yeah? We want to flush, to delete all the data. You can do something like that, and set. Yeah? So if you do something like that, and set, it will simply delete the score without affecting anything.
And if you want to change to stuff like a score
Yeah,
or age,
yeah, fair enough. Look, set is an object, yeah, so you can pass multiple properties. So the new score is 65, the new age is 34.
But the set is the method and then
Yeah.
divide the two.
Yeah, correct. So this is beyond the scope of the bootcamp. But just FYI that in the long term, you'll deal with more complex operations in the database. So just keep in mind that replacing the entire object in the database is not a good idea. It's not a good idea. Set is very powerful. We can even update the position of the third position of an array, things like that. Yeah. So you got all the documentation in the API. Actually, here, look at what the guy is doing here, right? So he has a collection, and here he's using set. So he's just replacing a property called B, whatever that means. I don't have any context about what sort of data we're dealing with. But if we got any other property, C, D, H, Y, Z, that will be respected. So this is the best efficient way to update documents. Yeah, so anything else? On Heroku, yeah, of course. But this is not up to Heroku, because your database won't be handled by Heroku. Correct, as you will learn from task number 25 to task number 31, which is not, strictly speaking, part of the certification program, but you are more than invited to keep working on it after the bootcamp. Actually, on Tuesday, we got a student of the Old Moon bootcamp of the last year who is going to talk about MongoDB. So you are more than welcome to keep working on it. Yeah. So during that process, you will learn first of all how to set up a local database in your system, yeah, and all the implications, because you can set up a local database, and that's good in localhost you can access. But what happens when you deploy the app to Heroku? You won't have access to your local database. Otherwise, you will have a huge security hole, right? If Heroku has access to your laptop, not good, yeah? So we'll learn how to set up a database in the cloud, yeah, for free. And then how to, actually I can show you, I'm doing that here. MLab, correct. Look, MLab does work. If MLab doesn't work anymore, that means that there are millions of websites that don't work anymore.
I mean, it doesn't let you to create a new account. I have to create one, it redirects you to MongoDB Atlas or something like
Correct. So now MLab has been acquired by MongoDB, by the organization that has created Mongo, which I believe is a good thing because now it's part of Mongo community. Yeah. So now maybe the sign up process is slightly different. I had to say that I've been using MLab, not the free plan, the paid plan. I'm paying $15 a month for Codeiry. It never ever has given me any problem. It just works, right? And that's the best thing. When a technology is transparent, that's the best thing. Yeah? With AWS, every week we have a new problem. But with MongoDB, just there, it works, no problem. Yeah? And if it gives you problems, it's because you are doing something wrong. Like I was doing something wrong, trying to update 100 kilobytes of information when you were trying. That was a bad pattern I was doing, so it was my fault. Once the problem has been fixed, it looks like now it's working okay, more or less. Yeah?
So quick question, have you moved from AWS to EC3?
That's a really good question. Now we are in the middle of the process of migrating. Yeah, we got some serious problems with the migration. Starting from yesterday midnight, it looks like the problem has been fixed. So once I have few hours, I'll keep working on that. And the idea is to definitely migrate. Yeah, I'll let you know once you can do React training with Google Cloud Platform, which is expected to happen shortly. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, so this is. In these highlighted lines, this is the way I decide whether I want to attack my local database or whether I want to attack my remote database. Yeah? Again, ignoring the details, I'm checking, am I in production mode? Production mode is Heroku's production, I'm development. Yeah? So if I'm in production, get the connectivity details from that string. If I'm in development mode, obviously I want to attack a different database with different user, different password, everything is different. So I would like to attack a different database as well. Yeah? So that's pretty much the idea. Anything else? No? Right, so let me show you something unrelated just because Vivian made a note about that. So talking about Google Cloud Platform, one of the main problems we had is how to deal with external libraries and weird things, right? One of them, let me just show you a bit an update of the progress on the UI training. So the idea will be, hey, you got something like that, and now you have to create the same user interface, right? So if I run this code on the right-hand side, you will see that eventually it will compile my CSS and my HTML. The first time it takes longer. This is one of the problems with Google Cloud Platform. First iteration takes a while, but the next ones are quicker. Yeah. So you see that now the code are literally the same. But if I change something, if I change the font size, of the content, look at what happened. It will try to compare that code against my code. Look at the border of the smartphone. It becomes red. Yeah, and then if visually speaking, you don't see the differences, because to be honest, at the moment, the code on the left-hand side, the UI looks the same as on the right-hand side, right? Well, okay, yeah, okay, fair enough. And then let me try to do that. Can you now spot any difference? We'll see. I mean, it's almost impossible, right? If you committed the code on the right, it's like, hey, what the hell? Why is it failing? It looks the same. Yeah, at the bottom, we'll show you the diff. I mean, to be honest, we are not going to be that strict 1 pixel, yeah? We have a threshold. Yeah? We'll accept that will be a valid solution. But you get the idea, right? So the idea will be to try to imitate an existing user interface across multiple devices. Laptops, tablets, smartphones, and 4K TVs as well. Yeah, so that's the idea, right? Anything else?
I have one question. Why, like Google and Facebook, they prefer to use MySQL instead of MongoDB? I mean, because for what I know, MongoDB is really good for like having like photos and really weird data.
Photos and weird data.
Yeah, like everything.
Oh, I see in a picture. So weird.
Exactly. No, yeah, but like big data, not
Yeah.
only like structured.
Yeah.
I think it should be better for them to use like MongoDB data, no? No,
I don't think there is a big difference. There is a big, so all these social media companies, the majority of them are using non-relational databases. Yeah. Again, there's a lot of literacy about the differences between relational databases, SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres, all these sort of things, against the new non-SQL databases. For them, it works better, right? Because the type of data they have, it just simplifies things. Yeah. Why Twitter use, I think, MariaDB and Facebook CassandраDB instead of Mongo? I don't know. I guess at some extent they will be slightly more performant, but this is just I don't know. I don't know why. Yeah.
that's something that only the engineers know.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, the thing is, you have to deal with billions of the data. The performance may be that important. Yeah.
As far as I know, SQL does not perform really well when you do queries. Doesn't handle a lot of queries.
I think it depends on the sort of queries, right? Some queries you just want to get a lot of details about one collection, but in other queries you want to mix data from multiple collections. So depending on the nature of the data and the way you want to establish relations, if you want that, you know that companies like Facebook, they are making relationships all the time. You are that person, you are a friend of that one, you like that article. So it looks like when you want to establish relationships to create a graph, yeah, a graph of people, of likes, of stuff like that, it looks like the non-relational database performs better. Not so if it performs better or if they are easier to handle, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, it
performs
performs better.
better.
You do the same thing with SQL Server, for
Yeah,
example,
yeah.
but then the query runtime is
Yeah, fair enough. I'm sure there will be other scenarios where classic SQL databases will be better. But yeah, anyway, I mean, to me, the message now is starting to work with JavaScript projects. To me personally, MongoDB I've been using it since 2012, and I'm very happy. I don't have any interest on why I need to move to other. It's been working perfectly. It works. It doesn't give me any problem. If it gives me any problem, it's my fault, and I'll learn. And that's why I think I'm now a better developer, because I've learned by using MongoDB. So I think it's pretty cool.
There's one
Yeah.
advantage of using structured databases. That's it makes business intelligence and analytics much easier. Because then for any data that you want to reach, all you need to know is the field name, and then all the BI tools will do.
Cool.
But with non-relational databases, BI tools won't work.
Anyways, take it easy, right? Take it easy. So, anything else? No? Cool. That was it, guys. Just a couple of hours of workshops today, right? Thank you.